What's up, everybody? I'm Billy Ryan, and you are listening to the No One Is Watching podcast, where we explore leadership, culture, and the impact they have on high-performing teams. We can all admire the championships that are won on the field and the big profits that show up on the balance sheet. But this show is dedicated to the premise that those battles are won long before they start. Through conversations with elite performers and leaders in the world of business, sports, and life in general, we'll learn valuable lessons on how you can optimize yourself and your organization. Joining us on the No One Is Watching podcast this week is Jeff Banman. Jeff has a unique and in-depth understanding of performing with everything on the line, as his career includes stints as a firefighter, Army Ranger, and counterterrorism operator for the CIA. Jeff currently serves as CEO of Brute Force Training, where he taps into his experience to help people perform at their best. Jeff, good to see you, brother.
What's going on, man? How are you?
I'm doing well. Well. Thanks for taking the time today. It's going to be fun.
No worries. I'm looking forward to it. A little early, so we're still functioning on coffee. I'm still IVs. Still got the IV coffee.
Oh, good, man. I'm right there with you.
Yep.
So what is the scariest situation you've ever been
in? Good question. Freaking first thing in the morning. Yeah, I think, I think it was years ago. It was actually after I got out of the military, back to the fire service. And there were multiple reasons for the scariness of it. Matter of fact, it probably will work well in today's conversation. So, I think it was probably 1999, like December. Yeah, it was Christmas Eve, December 1999. I had just come back out of military. We'd been the first guys on the ground in Kosovo that year when the Serbs invaded, and was back at the firehouse, toned out for a working fire, pulled out of the fire station, was riding officer on the ladder truck, pulled out of the fire station, turned left, and literally, like at the end of the street, you can just see the entire back of this house off. So it was right there. No time to prep, no time to think. Literally barely getting gear on, trying to stumble around, no headsets going on. It's like, you're keying the radio on the mic and just screaming towards the mic. You don't hear anybody. I mean, it's on, right? It's just game on. And we pull around, pull on up, get out, start to do a walk around, look, and you're Northern Virginia at that time, right? December, a lot of people, especially early 90s, as fire prevention was just becoming a thing. People would legitimately still often take coals out of the fireplace, set them on the back deck. And then, of course, at some point we'd be like, you'd have your whole back of your house on fire.
Yeah.
I mean, we won't go down that part.
Yeah. Right.
So we pull up, a pretty good amount of fire on the backside, but those fires do it because when siding burns, man, it's beautiful. It's just cranking, the whole thing consumes, but, so that's kind of what the assumption was a little bit was that we had, come back around front, engine pulls up right behind us. We start to make entry, crank it open, a lot more smoke, a lot more heat than should just be from maybe, ashes on the deck. So we knew we had something more significant. We ended up getting the garage open because the fire seemed to kind of be on that backside of the house. So the engine crew made entry through the garage, into that door. I took my team through the front door, start primary search, vent search, get around to see what's going on, try to get a handle on the conditions. I'm in there for a very short time going, something just does not feel right. We're starting to vent, no smoke alleviation, no heat alleviation. I pulled my people back. I'm like, hey, come back to the porch here real quick. Something doesn't feel good. I go around to the garage, check on my engine officer. He's literally like belly down. I've got so you think like, you got to take a couple steps up. You walk into the garage, right? So I've got his boots hanging out like this. You can see his boots hanging out. And literally the fire is right here. Just roll it. So 3/4 of the way down the door. So I'm tapping on him. Hey, back out. What's going on? I come back around to my people. I'm like, all right, let's take one more look. Let's see what's going on. Kind of make slow entry towards the living room, see if there's any conditional change whatsoever. I mean, still packed with heat, still packed with smoke. That shouldn't equate to, right, the work we had done. There should have been some alleviation in there. So we immediately pull out, start walking out, and there's a video of this somewhere. Somebody was videoing this. So we're coming out of the door. Literally, I mean, we're head to toe just covered in black soot. I mean, just thick. And as we're walking down, we get about halfway down the yard, and you see the living room floor slide off its base, break the gas line, and fall into the basement.
Oh, man.
Now, so there's your 7/18.
Yeah, giddy up.
Monday morning story.
Holy cow.
Yeah. Now, here was the thing that made that so scary. I didn't have an Al Dutton around. I didn't have a Jim Kaiser around. I didn't have a Mickey Buchanan around. I didn't have all the crew that knew me since 16, that taught me and groomed me to be a really great fireman. I didn't have wisdom above me around. I was the guy. I was the channel.
So you started firefighting at 16?
16, right? So now you're talking, I'm 24, 25 at this point, right? Been to a few things. And, and literally just because of the timing that it happened, chiefs hadn't arrived, extra units, like it was all coming in, and I was the channel of wisdom, right? I mean, that's what I call it, right? Leadership. I mean, real leadership, especially in high stress environments, there's got to be an anchor of wisdom around. There's got to be somebody who's paying attention, nose down, that gut feeling, making that call, going, I'm not really sure, and no. And man, that one triggered a whole cascade of events, and I had to go back and sit, the Irv Chilcoats and the Dave Bells, I mean, the gritty nitty DC firemen from 50s and 60s, and say, man, I almost killed everybody. And they're like, yeah, and you didn't. I mean, they had all, I mean, everybody had been there, right? And so I had to really go back, and that's what I did. I went back to these men that I'd grown up under, that had taught me, that I trusted, right? That are just, that ooze wisdom. They've been to more fires than I could spend, 900 years in the fire service and never go to. And so to sit with them and go, I'm not settled. Like, I mean, I was disrupted for probably a month. Because one wrong move, I don't trust my gut in that moment. I don't truly listening to everything screaming in my system. I kill at least 5 of us.
Was that your first big time test in that sort of leadership position?
I mean, I think, yeah, as a leader in that role, in that position. I mean, even because my engine officer, equal to it, but that's as a truck officer, my job is to control the conditions, right? To keep greater levels of observation, to really see what's going on until, other crews come in and stuff. And so that's part of my role, because the engine officer is focused on, hey, let's get water on this thing. Let's do this. I got to empower him to do his job really well. And that means I've got to have his back. And so I'm kind of the, the moment of like, all right, what are we doing in a bigger way here? So, yeah, I would say at that level with that many things in play, that was really the first, first operationally major evaluation of like leadership in that context, that could have really resulted in some gnarly stuff. So
well, that weighs on you differently, right? Because that's you're living it, right? The in the moment crisis is panic inducing enough and scary enough, right? Your life's on the line, everybody else's life's on the line. Yeah. But then you get that debrief and that heart rate comes down, and you're able to process that, particularly as a leader, right? And your point of like, man, there's a lot of people that could have died if I made the wrong decision. Yeah. That's got to shake you.
Well, and the whole reframing of it to where, because these guys, I mean, they're so, it's bled into me so much. I mean, when they said to me like, yeah. So, I mean, 5 weeks
right.
There's not a one of us that hasn't been in that scenario. If you're really a fireman that gets in and goes after it and you go do that stuff, like this is part of the job, young man. You know what I mean? So it was really affirming in a lot of ways. And then nurturing and, truly reassuring in some ways. And then we talked about like, what did I miss? What could I, you know what I mean? Like then the channel opened up to actually learn and re-look at that event differently and really extract a lot of goodness from it as well. So it's not like I did everything right to that point. However, kind of based on where I was and what I knew at the time, it's best I could do.
So how the hell did you get into firefighting at 16 years old?
Dude, I mean,
this sounds like one of those stories from 70 years ago where somebody lies about their birth certificate and lists, when they're 13 or something.
Yeah, apparently you can't do it anymore. Apparently you got to be 18 now.
Yeah.
No, dude. I mean, it's 10 degrees left. I'd be 350 pounds and I'd own a franchise of Domino's Pizza in Northern Virginia. I mean, and I'm PS. I'm going to push pause. There's a story I'm going to tell about you on this podcast.
Oh boy. Okay.
Okay.
I'm a little scared after that segue of 350 pounds of Domino's Pizza, but go ahead.
but how do I end up in fire service? I was working at Domino's. I mean, Domino's and Humboldt golf bags. Those were my first real jobs. I mean, outside of like plumber's assistant before I could, technically work and a few other things.
Yeah.
But when I had my card, I started working at Domino's at 15 and 8 months, slinging pizzas, going to pizza competitions and one of the fastest,
no kidding. Pizza competitions. I love it.
I mean, dude,
I love it.
Yeah. So, I mean, it was the real deal. And no kidding, quickly, like the regional manager really liked me. The franchise owner would come and talk to me about going through their, like it's 16 and 9 months, you can begin their management training program. Like they were tracking me. I mean, and at that time, dude, you gotta think, I mean, this was 1991, 92. Like to open a franchise in Domino's Pizza in Northern Virginia at that time.
Yeah.
It would have been a different game.
Yeah.
So not a bad gig. Not a bad gig. However, so one of the drivers, to get to the point, one of the drivers shows up one Saturday. He's like, "Hey man, come here, check this out." And I walk outside and he pops his trunk and he's got fireman gear in there. I'm like, "Where'd you get that?" He's like, "I joined the fire station." I'm like, "You can do that?" And he's like, "Yeah." I was like, "Can I do that?" He's like, "Matter of fact, yes, you can." Next day, man, I mean, literally, if we had Dan Carter on here, I mean, I walked into that firehouse, my head was shaved, all around here, long hair. I want to be a fireman. And just the way the timing fell, I think from the day I walked in that door to like 4 months later, I was in my first fire.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Just with the way like the voting fell, the school fell. Yeah, man. And then, became Loudoun County, Virginia's 14th, whatever, career fireman, somewhere in that space. Early 90s. I mean, there are 850 people now, fastest growing county in Northern Virginia. Yeah, dude, I mean,
so you always were, motivated, right? You working at, crazy. That goes without saying, but, diligent, I would say, as far as working. I said, you're working at 16, like any kid at a pizza parlor that parlays into firefight. I mean, dude, what'd you want to be as a kid when you were growing up? I mean, did you have something?
No, I had two very distinct things: Army and fireman. And I had blue corduroys when I played fireman, and I had brown corduroys when I played Army.
I love it. I love it.
Yeah, it's yeah. I mean, honestly, like I've gotten to live out virtually every childhood dream, with the exception of being a lawyer. That was in there at some point in time. It was actually going to be J. Arthur Banman, not Jeff Banman.
Oh wow!
Esquire.
Of course.
And then flying fighter jets, right?
So there was one like responsible occupation in there that your parents were probably like, that's probably a good path. That's the one you chose not to go.
Which being a lawyer.
Physically responsible lawyer.
Oh yeah. No, my mom ran a settlement agency, or closing agency in DC for 35 years, and she used to have clients come in and pictures of me on the background. And I think when I'm asked her one day, she's like, "Jane, is your son ever going to do anything that the chance of death isn't like readily there?" And by that time, I mean, you're talking, I think by that time I was traveling the world for Uncle Sam. I think she was just like, "No,
doesn't appear so."
Not going to go that way.
So was it obviously you had a calling to serve, right? I mean, you it can be cool when you're 16, you want to be a firefighter, great. But then like the reality eventually sets in and you're like, I'm doing this, to help other people.
I mean, I think so. I think there's always that. I mean, I think you intuitively have that. I mean, I think this stuff is in my DNA. It's in my system. We won't dive into my crazy belief system, but that's kind of what I believe. There are a lot of us that are put on the earth to do stuff like that.
Let's dive into it, man. Why not?
Take on those roles? Yeah, man. I mean, I think I think there are. We've got some. I got a crew of great guys that we've kind of got into the healing work years ago together, kind of all not as a plan, but independently. Really started deep diving and dealing with the trauma and the experiences of a life and a variety of other things. And a lot of us found that, the bulk of that came more from childhood than from, military or fire service or all the goodies. Those were just like sprinkle layers on top of the cake. I mean,
Yeah.
do you want to call Ryan and get him on this morning?
There's plenty of material. I know.
Right.
I know.
But it was interesting. I mean, some time in, we did circle up with one of the guys. I mean, this is about 8 of us or so, and you're talking all out of the tier 1 communities, whether it's the intelligence community or special operations community. They're guys I would get on a plane and go to war with in about 2.3 seconds tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
But it was interesting. At one point, the question was asked, like, "Hey, could you go back and do it again?" And went around the room and talked about it, and about probably 60% of the room was like, "Should have never been there in the first place."
Wow.
It was trying to prove something, trying to do this, trying to do that.
Wow.
Trying to escape something that drove them in, and they're exceptional operators. And, and they had the highest trauma profile from operations. But they can honestly be like, yeah, I mean, I did my job and I took nothing away from their capability as a person and should have never been there in the first place, right? Should have been a doctor, should have been farming, should have been something else.
Yeah.
And then there were about 40 of us that were like, oh, I think I'd be a bigger badass than I was. Because there's just nothing in the way about stuff anymore. Like there's no moral injury to navigate. There's no points of judgment to navigate. There's none of that garbage we're carrying. And and we fundamentally believe like, hey, this was part of our path in this life. We didn't do it for God and country. We didn't, we did it because it like truly resonated with the system. And, and I think we found a lot of people today, especially as you move up into leadership roles, they're kind of getting inked into leadership roles, but it's not resident in the system. You know what I mean? It's not like they're calling. And I worked for a guy at CIA for years and loved him to death. And he created his own leadership role. I mean, best person in the world I've ever worked for, ever. Like best leader I've ever worked for, who never wanted to be a leader. And he intuitively is there, but, not hunting for it, not fishing for it, doesn't want it. And then, but naturally called to be there. Right.
Yep.
So I think a lot of that goes into play with it.
Yeah. We talked about how just getting freed up mentally and emotionally, right? Whether it's, military, fighting fire, sports, life, being a father, or whatever it is, it is absolutely, incredibly enabling, right? You can you feel like you can do anything because you're not weighed down with all this, whether it's hardcore trauma or just anxiety or insecurity or whatever it might be. It's like, hey, you're free to go execute, right?
Yep. Yeah, just day in and day stressors, man. Just day in and day garbage. Like just purging that stuff kind of moment by moment, day by day. I often talk about in a lot of the work that I've done for years and everything for me. Like, me. I mean, so Billy, for those of you who don't know, Billy drove away from a project one morning about 9 a.m. going, I'm going to get fired. I'm going to get fired. I'm going to get fired. I know I'm going to get fired. I know I'm going to get fired.
Day one of the project for the record. But.
Day one pretty much, right after the first event completes. And I don't remember what that kid's name was.
Yeah,
F you,
I do, but I won't say it here.
Yep. Yeah, I'm not doing this. This is bullshit, blah, blah, blah. Just looked at him and be like, oh, well, here's the great thing. It's why we kept the van here. So if you would like to go in and get your stuff and get on the van, you may go.
Yeah.
But
well, that was such a great, it was great. I think we all had a blast and we learned a ton. I know I did. And I know those kids did as well. And getting back to what you're talking about, that group, I'm curious about that group, 40 some odd people that you've, stayed in touch with and talked through sort of the deeper issues, right? Like how many of those folks are, when they got into it, were they, now that they have the benefit of hindsight, right? The perspective, like, were they adrenaline junkies that were just chasing that high? Were they escaping something in their personal life? Was it all over the map? Like what were some of the drivers?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was all over the map in a lot of ways for everybody. I mean, everybody kind of had their own little signature and their own little thing that drove in that direction. A lot of them kind of came out of spaces trying to um, live up to dad or live up to lack of dad. I mean, I hate to say it, but that's a part of it for a lot of us.
Sure.
Um, and some of them it was escapism. Some of it was like the only channel, the only route out from middle of nowhere America, small town, not really going to make any money. Probably going to be working at 7-Eleven if they possibly can, and join, and then well, I don't want to do this. Like, how do you push yourself? And so, I mean, there's just a point of acceptance that we're all driven by some kind of garbage somewhere in the past.
Sure.
Just is what it is, but the ability to kind of look at it and recognize it and then leverage it. I mean, I had a CEO who, as a client, right, this all central nervous system regulation work, because a lot of times when I'm working with leaders, it's like, hey, listen, you are the central nervous system of your team or your company or your environment. Like if you're dysregulated or disrupted, guess what?
Right.
So is everybody else.
Yeah.
and that's recognize that step one. But for him, like we got to his stuff really early. 4 or 5, he believed his parents were driving around at night looking for a place to drop him off. He knew they didn't want him. They argued constantly. He was an accident. And so registered in his system was the sensation that he's about to get dropped off. Like 4 or 5. Could you imagine that being the
being able to remember that?
Yeah, well, and have that be the resident sensation in your body every day. That fear, that's that anchor of being unsafe.
Yeah.
Right? And so, of course, he's on his 3rd publicly traded company that he doesn't need to do. He's got enough money to do whatever the hell he wants for the rest of his life.
He just needs to be a part of something, right?
Well, but he's brilliant at what he does. He is a brilliant publicly traded CEO, because I looked at him, I was like, man, you could get kicked out of the car at any minute, right? I mean, somebody writes a bad review, stock drops, anything else shows up. Like you could be fired any micro moment of the day as a publicly traded CEO. And I said, man, you've just spent your life like staying in that car. And he was just like, whoa. And as soon as we started to really like isolate that, go to work on that sensation, go to work on that kind of dispersion in the central nervous system, like he still gets to keep all his goodies and all his goodness. I mean, I think that's the biggest question that you ask. It's like, if I go down this healing path, if I go down this process, am I going to lose, my goodness, all this capability? And my answer is no. You may find out you want to do something different, but you're not losing any of your capability. Like that doesn't go away. You're just going to have a different frame of reference for it or a different context, and you're going to have a new choice. You're either going to become even more powerful at what you're doing, because now you're not anchored with that drag of stuff, or you're going to be like, oh, I need to be doing something different. Cool. Then go do something different. I mean, that's really what happens.
It's a perfect segue, right? You're doing something different. You get out of the fire service and you enlist in the Army. Is that right?
Well, yeah, I decided, about 2 years in as a career person, I was like, you got to think I'd been riding for 4 years and I was, okay, is this going to be it? You know what I mean? Like I enjoy it, but came super easy to me. And wasn't sure that was going to be on the ticket for the next 35 or 40 years. And so kind of bouncing around. And one day we're actually at the grocery store, and the recruiting station was across the street from the firehouse facing the other direction. Anthony Hollywood Harrison, Sergeant Harrison, was in the grocery store. And, of course he comes over because he's in uniform, we're in uniform, chatting and whatever. And, talking about a few things, and he had just left 1st Ranger Battalion, and he was finishing his, retirement point, doing a little recruiting, and we got to talking, and he's like, hey, why don't you come see me? I'm like, I might. Die, Jeffrey A. Banman, do solemnly swear to defend the Constitution. Just felt right. Just felt like the next thing. And then on into the military, and then back out, and then post 9/11 recruited by CIA and a little over a decade there, and off we go into life, business, and beautiful things.
Yeah, man. So you're able to leverage all of that. I mean, that's a hell of a path, first of all, right? Like any one of those, a career in any one of those like sort of arenas would have been amazing and produced some pretty incredible stories, right? You've been able to walk all three of them for significant chunks of time, and then obviously have spent a ton of time in the we'll call it the human performance space since then. It's a broad term, but I think it sort of captures where your passion lies and where a lot of the value that you add to people and organizations is just tapping into that, right? And now you're in the business world, like a traditional ish business environment. And so how do you tap into that and leverage what you know into kind of figuring out what you don't know?
I gave a keynote 2020. I kind of chuckled in the middle of it. I was like, my life, beautifully orchestrated, radically unplanned. It's kind of a cosmic haha. I don't say cosmic joke because it's perfect. It's right where it needs to be. But that I would be running a fitness company today. Cool. Let's do that. Why not? But yeah, man. I mean, I think it has all. I don't know that I was put on this earth to do uh, like a career for 30 years. I mean, I knew that like intrinsically 16, 17, 18 years old, like I was not going to be stuck somewhere. And to do enough to understand, I don't think I was put on this earth to do all those things. I think I was put on this earth to be in those environments so that I could learn and understand humanness, human behavior, decision-making cycles at a depth that most people can't. I actually think that's been my path in this particular lifetime. And now, I get to bring that together not only for our team, for our customers, for our people around us, for the fitness industry at large. I mean, some of the things that I've learned over time is, there's only one question that matters to any living system, especially the human system, and that is, am I safe? Like everything is stacked on top of, am I safe? A million years ago, it was simply, am I safe to leave the cave, go get food? So physical safety was the question. Today, to answer that question is in my opinion, too complex for any one human being to actually answer, because it's, am I safe to say this, especially as a leader? Am I safe to say this, do this, be this, share this? Can I be frustrated? Can I be upset? Can I put my hand on your shoulder? Can I not put my hand on my shoulder? Can I give you a hug? Can I not give you a hug? Can I look at you a certain way? Can I walk into the office? Can I wear this? Can I wear that? What can I do? How do I say this? What am I supposed to speak? Like legitimately, Merry Christmas, wake up, go to work with that buzz in your body every day. No, you are not safe at any moment in time. And we often don't have, we don't have safe, partly because we've also never been taught to trust ourselves. Like there's a disconnect in a lot of people around that deeper level of self-trust, like how to go from your head, heart, and gut, how to get those aligned in all the sensory input. I mean, you even look at science right now, go listen to Huberman, go listen to everything else. This is a full sensory system. The mind goes here to here. You know what I mean? There's a set of minds in the body, not just your logical voice, right? And the most of us fail to, we have a disruption in that, right? It kind of goes like this, because our gut says one thing and then we have to evaluate everything else and we're off track. But bringing that in alignment, that begins to answer that question. Yes, I am safe because yes, I trust myself because yes, I am capable. Okay. And now I can breathe, and now I can re-regulate, and now I can regulate the people around me. And those are the things that come into play, that anchors of trust, understanding. It's the things that we did, with your team at the Braves, when we, brought them out 5 a.m. Hey guys, I don't care who you are, what your signing bonus was, what position you play. I don't even watch baseball. The only thing I care about is the character of the man standing before me. Now put your rucksack on and,
let's roll.
let's roll. 12.7 miles later. What is going on?
Yeah. In hindsight,
yeah. I mean, so dude, I think from, I look at this, I don't care where you are, what you do, right? The internal human system, the meat sack, right? I like to now just I say, I don't deal upstairs anymore. I just deal with the meat sack. Right? Central nervous system regulation, nose down. We got amazing people like Ryan who can get in there and work this thing, work his magic, and bring and just completely recalibrate upstairs. My job is to deal with you downstairs in a lot of ways, right? And nose down. And so I think bringing all those things together, what I watch is I don't care if you're a mom, dealing with 2 or 3 kids every day, same level of stress and anxiety experiencing in the body that a guy in combat or a person on the stock exchange floor or a leader walking in to take over and redo things. I don't care who you are, where you are internally, cliff or roller coaster, body doesn't know the difference, same physiological response. And so the same processes apply, the same tools and techniques apply, and it's just a matter of contextual application of certain things. That's it. That's it. That's what I've learned, in 40 years of doing stupid shit. That's what doesn't matter. Same thing.
So I'm curious about, so you're CEO of Brute Force Training, right? And so we've seen, I want to hear your perspective on, your approach to it and that community. But I've always been, first I was very skeptical, and then kind of peeling back a few layers, kind of intrigued by it. I'm a big believer that everybody wants to be a part of something bigger than themselves, right? And so that's why people join the military. That's why kids join gangs. That's why a lot of people want to be on sports teams, whatever it might be. And so you see that in the fitness community. CrossFit just goes, explodes. And it's like, yeah, look, you'll look great in a bathing suit and you'll be in great shape. But I don't think that's there's a lot of sort of techniques that if you eat really well and you exercise a lot, you're gonna be healthy, you're gonna look good, right? But the appeal of just using CrossFit as an example, there's obviously others, but that's it's that tribe mentality, that community that you build.
Yeah. I mean, go back and read Younger, right? I mean, tribe. I mean, we have a yearning and a crave. I mean, the worst thing that can happen in the human system is to be booted out of the tribe, right? That's what we're all fearful of, and that's often a massive driver for us to like, we're called to a community. Then what happens is we get accepted into that community. Then all of a sudden, I'm no longer safe. Am I here? One thing little happens, and then I'm like, oh, am I going to get booted? Because getting booted is almost worse than never getting in.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah. So, I mean, and it's just, and I don't care where you are. Like that goes from a church to to a fitness group, to a gym, to whatever it is. And I think, this is an incredible opportunity in my view, right? That what we're doing here and what we're bringing together and the partnerships that we're bringing together, the new terminology, resiliency is out, adaptive capacity is in. It's kind of the way we talk about it, right? Which is the ability, science is finally getting to this place where it's like, hey, stress isn't going to go away. Stop trying to manage it or mitigate it or, put a spoon in it or, pour a glass half full and then empty it or whatever else. Like, no, it's going to be here and it's here for good. And matter of fact, stress plus rest equals growth, right? This is how we actually grow. When we stress a system, fitness, mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually, we grow, right? So, the intention here is a bigger, greater adaptive capacity, bigger tank, hold more stress with less cost on the system. That's how we do it.
As opposed to resiliency, which is, sort of letting something happening to you and then responding to it, right?
Right, responding to it or taking a step out of it. I mean, it's not like I get to call a timeout in a house fire, a gunfight, and be like, hey, hold on,
right.
Hold on. I need to breathe right now.
Let me process this. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we tried. Listen, we all spent our time trying. We've been trying to figure this out. But here's the thing about fitness, and I'm assuming you're kind of looking at like the fitness community and that tribal kind of connection point in any way, shape, or form. I mean, I will have known my job. I've done my job well when we have built the safest fitness brand on the market. Because here's what I believe. Here's what I believe. There's 2 transactions that have to happen for anybody to really do business with you, work with you, or come into the community or tribe or whatever you want to call it, right? The crew or whatever you want to call it. One, there has to be a anchor of trust somewhere. Like there has to be a true and deep anchor of trust in the organization or the values or whatever's there. And as a CEO, that's part of my job. As with Mo, he's an anchor of trust. My team, I've created as anchors of trust everywhere. Even my customer service, my customer success manager, my, person that runs all my inventory, like they're all anchors of trust for our entire community, both internally and externally in our customers, because, you know, we people want to know we're going to get things done right. Okay. So have to build anchors of trust. And then I've got to build anchors of trust, especially in our Facebook group. I mean, we're 10,300 people in our Facebook group. We're 400 people in our Facebook group. So big chunk of people.
Right.
Yeah. And I want people to feel that they can show up, be exactly who they are in exactly this moment in time, and get the support they need, be loved, be appreciated, be acknowledged. I had a woman the other day. She's like, hey, I didn't want to do it this morning. I didn't want to get on it. Put the 1-year-old in the crib, put the 3-year-old somewhere else. Got after a workout. She didn't finish it. She's like, hey, I failed here, here, and here. I commented back into the face. I'm like, there was no failure. Where's failure?
Right.
But he's like, do me a favor. Stop, take a deep breath, repeat after me. I am a badass. You know what I mean? Like I want people to feel good in who they are and what they're accomplishing. I don't care what they look like. Like I don't have a thing. There's not a criteria to be healthy and fit. Healthy and fit. There isn't. It's get after it. And so that's for us, especially at Brute Force. Like that's the model, and that's the standard in which I operate. I want people to feel safe coming into our community, that they can express themselves physically, mentally, or emotionally, that they can get support they need, they can feel good in their bodies. And if they get 10 minutes in on a sandbag in the morning, they should be rewarded for that, or at least encouraged in that, and progressively move forward. And so I think that's where the trajectory is, if that answers your question in some convoluted way, I'm sure.
Yeah, no, it does. It does.
Yeah.
It's just the notion of I suppose, proactive, you talked about resiliency versus adaptive capacity, but also just the community, the self-esteem, the ability to feel like I got up, I did something today. I've always wrestled with, I try to do yoga. I struggle with, I'm a competitive person. So you're not supposed to be competing. And it's hard for me to turn that off, even when it's like 5 a.m. by myself in the dark. And I'm like, stop doing it. And I catch myself doing it. So I get it. It's like, I didn't have the A+ game today. And it's like, well, I got 20 minutes of something in, it's something. So, just that ability to step outside, be proactive, and give yourself a little grace, whether it's the mom of 3 or the.
Well, and that's why, there's a big difference between giving yourself grace and letting yourself off the hook. There's a big difference there.
Yeah.
And I think, and that's what I talk about, like even in our challenge stuff, that's really what our challenge, that's what I'm trying to teach my people in our 333 challenge. Really, when you leave that, this isn't where I want to see major gains. We're going to actually move you into gains and improvements and all kinds of stuff. This is creating the systems and structures for yourself that really enable that to come about. And life's going to show up. Life is going to show up, period. Where can I give myself grace to be like, okay, and then here's my backup plan, or here's what I got done, and hey, I got it done, versus, I'm going to do that thing. Big difference there. Big difference. Grace and letting yourself off the hook are two radically different things.
How did that apply to you? So we talked about fought fires, Army Ranger, CIA. You lived in a long, and then got out of that and did some private sector consulting work, but still very much in that bubble of human performance, elite achieving, high caliber people, right? Business, sports, right. Whatever arena it might be. And now you're in the real world, right? Like the regular world that everybody else lives in. World. And was it hard for you to kind of, I know you're never going to turn that switch off, but sort of be able to redirect and adapt some of your approach to that?
Yeah. I think, here's the interesting character trait about me personally versus others. Like, one, I get our customers. For as much as I've done, I am when it comes to the military, and let's talk about the physicality side for a minute. And I love that this has been my path because it's taught me so much. So I'm a minimum standards guy. I'm not a top tier fitness guy. I have battled health and fitness my entire life. My mom did a lot of great things. It was just my mom and my sister growing up. She had planned to be a stay at home mom, had to figure it out, built a freaking solid business over 35 years, did a lot of great things. Health and fitness was not one of them. Really bad eating habits. I mean, I was, even I wanted to go to work for Fairfax County Fire and Rescue so bad my senior year of high school. The 13-minute mile and a half, that was the test. 13-minute mile and a half. My fastest, I could not break 13:06. I just couldn't do it. I didn't grow up with a dad around. I didn't grow up with a lot of male influence or discipline. Matter of fact, I grew up kind of being culturally moved in the other way of, oh, it's okay. You don't have to be like that. You don't have to look like that. You know, unhealthy, and
Mhm.
mom and I have cleared all that stuff today. We've actually had brilliant, amazing conversations. However, like those are the impacts, right? And so here I don't know how to manage myself well. I don't know how to manage my stress. I'm taught how to kind of stress eat in a way, relieve anxiety that direction, all those traits. And so now all of a sudden, like I want to be this, like there's this athlete inside me that wants to come out. There's this driving animal that wants to come out, but the systems and the structures and the processes that maybe like you got to kind of give you that I'm going to do this thing, I didn't get. Like they didn't get integrated, so I had to learn to teach myself a lot of that stuff. And I've gone up and down. I mean, just been a chunk of monk at one point in time. I mean, I got 252 at one point, and I've had to calibrate. And I still this day, I mean, I realized, did this exercise with somebody years ago, looking at like food as a change of state and what was going on. Pizza and Chinese are my safest foods. Like if I'm feeling stressed or worried or out of sync or unsafe or whatever, I'm ordering pizza or Chinese. Why? Because that's like the one time that there wasn't anger or frustration in the house. Mom wasn't stressed out. We got in on a Friday night. We actually connected as a family. Like, and I'm looking for that settled feeling, right? That's what I'm chasing. And
Yeah.
so, dude, I mean, it has been a path for me, minimum standard ranger, 5 miles, 40 minutes, like just right in the zone. Um, and so, I have to take it on. It has not been easy for me. And so my brain pattern actually is not so, I don't come, Mo and I talk about this because he's opposite end of that. He comes a little more
And Mo's your
charged, a
business
little
partner?
more. Mo's our chief human performance officer.
Got
Been
it.
in the fitness industry for 30 plus. Rad, amazing dude, right? And so encouraging, so inviting. But he's got that trigger that I didn't really get early on. That I had to build. He kind of had intuitively.
Mm-hmm.
So we talk about this stuff all the time. Um, you know, but it was interesting coming out of creating this little bubble in life into now a big dose of real humanness, right? Jump in the pool with 10,000 other people that are walking all kinds of different places from life, that are dealing with all kinds of things. And it really kind of, when you put yourself in a bubble for several years, you kind of hone yourself into really amazing people, and just you make yourself small basically in a way.
Yep.
And then you step back into this business world, and business in terms of not just me doing something, but now I've got 10,000, 30,000, 40,000 customers to deal with. Um, it was an eye opener, and I had to really take a step back and recalibrate and and really learn to be like, okay, this has been my world, not their world, and really get in their world to understand the things they're dealing with, the problems they're facing, what's on their plate. And that began to really recenter how I approached a lot of things. And still to this day, like, hey, you just did that workout with, the 1-year-old screaming and crying, and the 3-year-old, jumping on you every 3 minutes. You are a badass. Like, so what? You didn't get everything. You got 103 reps, or like, I think she got like 103 squats in as opposed to 200 was today, and it's like, okay, mom, you know what I mean? Hey, lady,
Yeah.
you rocked it.
And
Like,
the kids
give
are still
yourself,
alive, so you did
and the
okay.
kids are still alive, and you're still moving, right? I mean, like,
right.
like to embrace the amazingness of that, I think is so important. And I don't think what the hit for me was, you live in a community that encourage each other. You and I have spent a lot of time together during that time in my little bubble. You and Ryan and these guys got into my bubble. We operate at a certain level, and then I think we miss the chance a lot of times to give that goodness to other people, to be like, hey, you're a rock star for getting through your day. If you got
Yeah.
20 minutes in today, dude, I don't think under your conditions, I probably wouldn't have gotten 20 minutes in today. Like, let's be honest about it. So I don't know. I feel like I bring a little more balanced approach because I feel like I've really lived in the world, in the lives of my customers, that struggle, that one too many things stacked up on my plate. Um, not prepping myself in the morning for food, getting home at night, and then it's like, all right, let's order a pizza because I didn't take anything out for dinner. You know what I mean? Like real life crap.
Well, there's this misconception of whether it's professional athletes or the special operations community or uh, even just like really high powered business executives who've been really successful in the business world, that they just roll out of bed and are great. That it's just innate in them, right? And there's so much, right? Like, I mean, you and I both seen it, like behind the scenes. Very much not the case, but they are. To your point, you were able to create that, sort of build that infrastructure for yourself as you were flying the plane, right? Yeah. Others are born with it and have some advantages over you and probably other disadvantages, and that perspective, right? Like there's what I got out of sports is just seeing, like, quote unquote, the rest of the world and how they live. Like, man, there's so many people that just couldn't deal with just a regular day. And because there's so much stuff, and the COVID hits and people start working from home, myself included. And I joke with my wife. I remember, I would work a lot when I was in baseball, but I would go into the office when we were at home, and I'd get in and I'd have a lot of stuff going on, and I'd have a cup of coffee and I'd sit at my desk, and she'd call, and I'm like, I just saw you 30 minutes ago. Like, what's going on? So I'd answer, and she's like, well, I just, she had something going on. I'm like, hey, I just got some stuff I got to deal with. Let me call you back later. Hang up the phone. I needed 10 minutes to, like, get my coffee in me and get sort of grounded to start my day. And then you start working from home and you're like, man, you don't get those 10 minutes, right? There's like, to your point in the firefight, you can't call timeout and say, hey, just let me catch my breath here. It's like kids screaming, doorbells ringing, this is going on, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, man, that is really not that different, to your point about sports or the military or whatever. It's just dealing with it.
You're in a firefight. You step out of bed in the morning. You're in a firefight. Kids screaming, phone ringing. Something happened. Things got spilt. You're behind. Like whatever. And we put all these restrictions in our way. And 9 times out of 10, man, we've done it to ourselves. Just in the way we've, have not. Like, I was not a good. None of us really learned good boundaries, right? Growing up in a lot of ways. But let's just talk like simplicity about like, hey, like with little man. I mean, for the last couple of years, it's like, okay, dude, if you get up before this time, here's what dad needs. I have 30 minutes of time that sets me up for my day. Like this, and this is what I do in the time, and here's how it goes, and this is why I do this stuff. And so if you wake up in this window, you can play, you can come hang out with me. However, you're playing, like, this is still quiet time in the morning. Man, one morning I got up, and when I come out of my master, it's like right to my living room. And he's sitting on the couch next to the fireplace on, and he's sitting there with a blanket over his legs, reading a book. And he looks at me, and he's like, I'm on the couch first. It's my quiet time. And I was like, dude, you could just maybe turn 5, or like, he's just that 4 or 5 time frame. I'm like, dude, I love you. But and those are the things that today I think, like, what do I want to develop in my son right now at this critical point in time? What are those things? Personal boundaries, taking care of yourself, because if you're not good, you can't be good for anybody else. And I'm telling you, my greatest failure in life was depleting myself down so much that eventually I clearly had a massive tank because I made it to 45, 44, 45 before I really, what I say would break, like broke, like just couldn't do it anymore. Didn't have any more capacity for anyone or anything else left, period. So pretty big tank. A lot of us have a big tank, and that's about the age we make it to. And then we just are out of capacity. We've carried everybody else's shit. We've provided for everybody else. We've took everything on. We've took all the problems. We've tried to solve everything. We've done everything. We've grind. We've done what we need to do, and we're out of capacity. And the greatest thing I've done since then is my structure. My time is disciplined. Period. And I put a post up the other day I had a moment come that was like, if you can't hold my energy, you can't have my energy. And that goes for friends, that goes for people that are close in my life or anybody around me. But I need to know that I got support and that I'm supporting myself, man. And I think you've learned that. A lot of people over COVID had a rude awakening going, oh, this is life. And I think even a lot of people that worked outside the home, or if you had a parent in the home managing the family and the children, and then the other parent was suddenly there, they're like, oh, this is what you do.
Oh yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
oh, 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 I love you. Thank you.
Yeah, no doubt. Yeah, no,
Yeah.
I definitely had that moment personally. I mean, it was, I don't think I'm unique, right? But like they just crystallizes and you're like, and I was doing something, motivated for different reasons and it was passion and I loved it. And my tank it eventually would have bottomed out, right? It's a finite,
Dude.
You've got finite discipline, finite willpower, eventually. And you go back a couple generations, right? When, I remember seeing this post a few years ago where it was like, at my age, my grandfather had raised a family, fought in a war, built a house, and retired. I'm just trying to wipe the Nutella off my iPhone right now and can't do it successfully. And I was like, I chuckled because like you look back on how hard lives were for, just our parents, right? Like your mom raising kids and like, yeah, okay, something's going to fall by the wayside. Okay, it's going to be health and nutrition, right? Because I got to work. I can't worry about that stuff. And it's just like,
figure it out, kid.
Yeah. Yeah. And so there's just like, there's finite resources that we can allocate. And I think I've gotten to the point now where I embrace that. I think my wife struggles with it because she's just a giver and a pleaser. And like, man, you got to put your mask on first. Because if you don't, these kids you're not going to be able to do what you need to do and what you want to do. That's hard. That was hard for me to learn.
Yeah, man. It was hard for me to learn. If I'm not good, I can't be good for anyone around me, And then the other thing that really came to me in taking this role on at Brute Force was, big difference between, and it just kind of came up one day for me. I have these little moments that pop. And it was, dude, you need to lead this, not carry it. You need to lead this community, not carry this community. And I was like, oh, I don't know what we can say on your.
I'll hit the mute button.
But let's just say it was a square kick to the junk.
Yeah.
And like, wow, yeah, because I've tried to carry a lot in my life, like all of us have, all of you included. You've tried to carry entire organizations on your back. I've watched you. I've watched you.
Well,
Billy, let's not do this.
But you know what? That's a different skill set, right? That is like you were an operator for a long time. And I've talked to a lot of different people about this exact theme of the difference between being an operator and being a leader. And just because you can do one well doesn't mean you can do the other one well, and vice versa, and so it's that moment of like, I can't just get in there and fix it and do it, because really I'm doing everybody else a disservice if I do. It's like kids, right? It's like watching your son. You're sitting back, you're like, oh, he's about to fall out of that tree. I know he is, but if I keep catching him, he's going to keep falling out of that tree.
You got to learn the next layer of calculations. All right, if he falls from that direction in any position, he's going to break something. Like we're gonna like I have to do the
cost benefit analysis of that moral.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Is this a learning lesson, or are we going to be taking a trip to the hospital?
Right.
Because if we're over here, then I'm okay to intercede. If we're over here, you just gotta let it go. Yeah. We got to do a decision making tree around.
Yeah. Right. But did you struggle with that getting out? Probably even in your private sector consulting work, I would imagine that was challenging, because you're advising and you are trying to educate and to enable folks, but they don't work for you. They don't report to you. They can fire you if they don't like what you're saying. And so, there's that. How do you, whether it's the delivery mechanism or your ability to just sort of disseminate that information in a way that's going to resonate with someone who frankly doesn't need to listen to you, but they'd be well served too.
Well, and I think, I think that's been a part of it. I think that phase, like that area, that was a big growth point in like where you and I kind of intersected in life for me. How do you, cause hey, you get a call from, here's my world. You get a call from the Atlanta Braves. They're like, hey, we just turned down these other two or three people, one of which, is a well-known organization that happened to, have a particular team win a very high value thing. And you're the guy that gets picked to come do this leadership program. Like that's a wow. You know what I mean? Like, okay, you're not playing in the minors anymore, really, so to speak. So throw some baseball terminology at you, this morning. But fundamentally, I mean, here was the cool thing too at the agency and like in the time of my teaching and the human behavior work I've done, a lot of what I had to do over time was learn how to take really, scientific or deep information and then translate that and make that make sense to where they were because they didn't really care about all the depth of it. They didn't care about how much research I did and all that stuff. They wanted to know what they needed to do to fix the problem to move on. And and it became this place of learning how to like step away from or separate like what my responsibility is versus what their responsibility is. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And if I'm not going down to answer your question, jump in on me. But learning to create a boundary between what I know I'm capable of doing, what I'm bringing to the table, and the goodness that I'm showing up with, and I will give you 220% while I'm here. And this doesn't work if you don't give it back to me.
Yep.
And I think that was that first session, that was that first morning session with the Braves, which is truly, I don't care. I don't care. I don't even watch baseball. Like at that point, I mean, this is an honor and this is rad. And I don't really care. Like fundamentally, I care about who you are showing up with me over this time. And and I think stripping away some things at times, and then reframing things for guys, using shooting to talk about hitting or pitching or, playing shortstop, like using those little techniques and those crazy little things that are like, causing disconnections to reframe some stuff. I mean, you saw it in some of those guys' eyes. They were like, oh, I would have never even considered it that way.
Yeah. We focus so much on the execution piece of it, like what the mechanics of what we're doing, whether it's sports or business. Right. And
here's where I think the answer to your question is. I'm sorry, my brain isn't firing fully. Like what I feel like I've learned to do over time is get out of how I think it should be, because this is where we break down, right? You have a way of doing things that has worked. I have a way of doing things that has worked. Technically we feel like it should be this way, but bringing all that goodness to the table and letting go and inviting someone to join you in that space, like that becomes the art form, when I look at it. And I think that's what I was really playing with, developing and getting into, which is like, listen, I'll show up and bring you all my goodness. And I think I've got some wisdom you can borrow to be successful in life, because I borrowed a lot of wisdom from people that have gotten me here in this phase of my life. I'm confident in what I'm bringing to you. And then I have to create an invitation for you to participate with me versus like showing up being like, this is how we've done it for this long. Cause that's always going to be a wall.
Well, I mean, you get back to like, when we originally met in the partnership, that was a big part of the reason why we went with you. And at that time was we wanted that to be, look, there's the appeal or the draw where some folks just want to sit down and have a beer with an Army Ranger or a Navy SEAL and just kind of feel cool and hear good stories. Right. And I'm like, hey, that's all well and good. That's not like the intent of what we're trying to put together here. It was great that, you and I could do that. We did that in San Diego, sit down, have some beers and talk. And you didn't know anything about my background. I didn't know anything about yours. And we kind of learned that over time, but you can tap in pretty quickly on who the person is, right? What the character is and what drives them. And I, did not know you very well at the time, got to know you obviously very well after that, but could tell that it was important to you and that you were trying to impart some of that wisdom on these kids. And, I'm just a big believer that they can see through it too, right? We didn't want to go through and tick a box and say, we did this. We had some special forces guys come in and we lifted logs in the ocean and, we did all this other stuff. I'm like, great, but what did you get out of that? Right. This one was much more, off ball and just trying to make you better people. And that was, you're referring to that one incident we had.
And he was great. I mean, 3 days later, right? Biggest convert of the
Yeah,
whole thing.
he crushed
Ryan
it.
at the end of it going, man, I learned so much about myself and this is amazing. And I guess having at that, I mean, it was the perfect intersection for me because I was confident enough in my own space and time, my own skin, and what I was doing and the course of action we were taking that it was actually exactly what I wanted to see. You know, I mean, you got to get from my end. I tell this story. I'm like, I've got the entire Braves leadership behind me, and this kid's like throwing stuff and everything else, and I can feel these eyes back here going, "What are you doing?" You know, and I'm just as calm as I can be, and I'm like, "Okay, man. Well, then, just get on the bus, just get your stuff, and get like,
Right.
you don't have to be here. This is a choice. You can go.
Yep.
There's the door." I mean, and that took some balls. That's one of my it's like one of my top 5 all ballsiest things I've ever done in my life, kind of deal.
There was a moment where I'm like, okay, this is going to go one of two directions, and if it goes one, like to your point, I'm probably out of a job. But
Right.
it gets back to your earlier point about it's way worse to get kicked out of the tribe than to never join it. And he wasn't in it yet, but he kind of sensed that something was coming. And he was like, man, if I leave now, I'm not going to be a part of it. Like I could just see it in his eyes, and he stuck around not knowing what he was getting into.
Well, and here's the thing. Here's the powerful thing. The reason why it worked. He made the choice to be there. I didn't have to make the choice for him. And
Right.
that was the thing. It's like, this is and because you had given us the right to boot anybody out of that. Like we had some great authority that I was impressed with. Like we could dump everybody. But the cool thing was, and I think the most powerful thing was, he made the choice to stay. He made the choice to be a part of it. He hit his wall and he chose. And whether that was by, a trigger to fear of, hey, I'm not going to be a part of this thing and I really want to, but he understood the desire, and then he got the reward over the next few, days and hopefully next few weeks and lifetime. And I don't know what he's up to today. But yeah, I mean, I think that's the beautiful thing because he chose it. And then he had to work to create, because he kind of put himself in a deficit with the tribe. All the other guys looking at him like, dude, you were a bit of a warning.
Well, and to answer your question, he's still in the big leagues. He's had a nice career for himself, and and at that time, he was very much at kind of a turning point in his career. He was coming off a bad year in the minor leagues, and wound up having a conversation with him, sort of touching on that exact thing, and it was just so cool to be a part of, to see the kid bounce back and respond to that and go on and do good things. And to your point, it's because he bought in, it's because he wanted to do it for himself. And and
we gave him the space. You gave him the space, Ryan. I mean, it was brilliant. I mean, that the crew that he had, of people being like, okay, we're going to as a community, as a tribe, we're going to hold you accountable. And here's the standard to be here. You know what I mean? And you get to have that choice. And he chose it each day. I mean, and that's what we miss, I think, is, we don't have to kick people out. They will self-select. If we create the conditions correctly, they will self-select. And that's the way I like to approach all of life, even Brute Force's team. Like we're going somewhere, and you will be here or you won't. And that's by your behavior, your commitment, your effort, your work. And, you are either selecting in or selecting out of our community, of the way we operate. I mean, we hold our community to standards. Even in the Facebook group, I boo people out. If there's anybody that gets snarky or gets crappy with anybody else in the group, or doesn't, makes a demeaning comment, or, I mean, you are like, it is instant and it is public, and I have no problem with it. Go write me a bad review. Go write me that bad review, and I will post it on the front page of my website.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, we've got a standard, and we got a standard of love and care and support and safe and acceleration, right? That's what I care about. That's what I care about around my community and my people and my team internally. And you're either going to operate or you're not. I mean, that's the way it goes.
Well, it's so cool to see that at Brute Force now, because that's what we were trying to create in Atlanta at the time. We're trying to build toward, I should say, because look, I don't care who you are, how good you are at assessment and selection, drafting players, hiring folks, whatever. You are going to miss. You're going to make mistakes, right?
Always.
And
Yep.
So if you're always trying to thread the needle on finding the perfect candidate, finding the perfect player that fits your system, you're gonna whiff on some of those, and then you can't do anything with them. So what we wanted to try to create was exactly what you just touched on, right? That self-regulating, self-selecting community where it's like, look, this is your clubhouse. You guys are going to decide what you'll accept and what you won't, both from yourself and from your teammates. And so empowering them. And what you're doing at Bruce Force is that, right? This is the detractors. Everybody's going to have them, right? They're all going to, this isn't for me. And then they're going to go write you a bad review and whatever and make a fool of themselves. But all that does is makes that unit, makes that tribe that have bought in even tighter and even stronger.
Yep. I mean, it's a part of the deal. I mean, I don't look at this as like a business transaction. I want a community. I want a community of really, I mean, we're coming out later and you can bleep it if you want, but I mean, I'm getting a little ballsy. I mean, we're like, even on the back end of our website or the front end page, it's a little bit lower right now because I haven't, eked it up yet. But, I'm tired of this, and me, I'm tired of this, embrace the suck, be this, do that kind of community stuff. And so I came up with this statement and I was like, Mo, can we do this? And he was like, oh yeah. And I looked at him one day, I'm like, here's my thought. Hard is relative. Powerful is undeniable. Fuck hard, be powerful. Like I can do hard things for limited times, but even if I have a negative context to that will always be hard. That will always be suck. That will always be these things. And 9 times out of 10, 99.9% of people out there, they don't want to live hard lives. I don't want to live a hard life.
Right.
I want to live a powerful life. Like I want to have the power to navigate the moment at the time, whether that's walking in the door at the end of work, whether that's walking into a business that's not doing well and I need to really focus, whether that's walking to a team that, maybe is in shambles and I've got to completely I want powerful people around me. I don't need hard asses. I need powerful people who think and are dynamic and are adaptive and win and find the way they will win. If that's a 35-pound sandbag or a 50-pound sandbag, like I tell people all the time, I don't care about your weight. I don't care about your time. I care about what you did and what you learned and how you grew. That's what I want to know. You want to post something? Give me that.
That's so funny. No. What do you mean? No, I'm sorry.
You got Jeff Banman fired up again.
Untapped. He's unhinged.
Right.
No, man. When I kicked off this project, I reluctantly waded into the social media waters, right? You start seeing things out there, and I'd seen all the, sort of embrace the suck sort of, stuff that was all over the place. But you start seeing it in other places, right? The business world and these entrepreneurs and everything else, and they're like, hey, I'm up at 4:30 every day and I'm doing this. And it's like, I'm doing it because it's hard and I'm doing it. I'm like, okay, there's something to learn from that. There's no doubt. Like, no,
dude. Yeah. I talk about it all the time. Like there's real value. It is contextual. I leverage that, in the course of to maneuver things, but keep going. Yeah.
No, it's value to it. Why are you doing it though? Right. Are you doing it just to say I did it and post an Instagram picture, or are you doing it because it's going to make you, your 30 minutes in the morning, it's going to make you centered. It's going to make you better at your day. Because if you don't, it's a different definition of hard, right? If I'm up till 2 a.m. and I roll out of bed at 6:30 in the morning and I slug down some coffee and I hop in my car, I'm like, that's hard. That's a different kind of hard. I'm not performing at a high level, right? So it's like, what kind of hard? And now, so is going to the gym at 5 o'clock in the morning and banging out some reps or whatever. But it's the why behind what you want to do. That's got to be the driver. And that's obviously what drives you. You're a very intentional person, right? It's like anybody that meets you knows that in short order. But I think that resonates with people, right? Like you can go do whatever you can do P90X or CrossFit or all these like, trendy exercises that have been around and you can get results, but why are you doing it? How are you going to do it? Like, what else are you going to get out of that other than like the six pack?
What's the cumulative effect?
Yeah.
That's what I always look at, right? I mean, and that's, to me, what's the end result? The end result is I don't want to do hard things to be hard. I want to do hard things to be more powerful in the moments that show up. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like every day and everyday life. You know what I mean? Like the enemy isn't sitting outside the door at 4:30 right now. And if it is, I'll be up at 3:30, but that's not the context of my life right now. Now, I do get up early. I like to be up at 5 because I like to have my quiet time because there are strategic things I need to have in my day. I did a practice. I was curious about something. Like I wanted to figure out what was distracting me from getting workouts done during the day at one point in time.
Yep.
So I made a commitment. Like I removed everything from bed to Peloton, like literally. Like I prepped myself fully. And for 90 days, I went bed to Peloton, nothing in between, shoes. And I found like, even if I started the coffee, so I'd have it when I'm done, starting that coffee led to putting a dish in the sink, led to washing that dish, led to this, led to that. And I was off. So, I mean, hard is completely relative to where you are in your life, and do hard things. I'm not saying not be hard. There isn't an essence of weakness. Powerful to me has no weakness. And oh, P.S. by the way, the top tier operators I know, like the really, 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 really 1.1% of the 1% out there are the most powerful people I know on the planet.
Mm-hmm.
They are tuned and capable of dealing with whatever shows up. Like they are so regulated. And that's what I want to leave behind with people, right? The more regulated I am, life's easy. Internal state matches external conditions. And if I can do that, then I've got all my faculties to navigate whatever it is. Fight with my spouse, kids screaming and yelling, house on fire, shots being fired. Doesn't matter. You know what I mean? Baseball team falling apart. That's it.
Yeah. You see, again, getting to do hard things for what purpose, right? You see it in the movies. The guys right before they go into battle, they're taking a nap, right? You see it, it's all the time in sports. Guys are in the clubhouse sleeping right before a game, or a boxer before a big fight, they're taking a power nap. And it's so counterintuitive because you're like, man, I'd be, doing push-ups and running crazy. And it's like, these guys can, to your point about the high performers can regulate that, right?
You're in Ranger Battalion, literally on a C-130 with a freaking, 90-pound rucksack sitting on your lap with your head on your Ranger buddy, falling asleep, but till they open the door, till you get 20 minutes, you know what I mean? You got to get your ass up. You got to hook up to the freaking stuff and you got to exit an aircraft. Like we're all freaking packed in like sardines in a C-130 flying map of the earth sleeping.
Yeah. You're not listening to Eye of the Tiger, punching yourself in the face, trying to get
not until 20 minutes.
Right.
Not until 20 minutes. And then it's more human than human, and then it's 65 Rangers going, let me out of this door. Let's rock and roll.
Right.
That was a good time. Right. I mean, because then you got to ramp up the heart because you're about to go do something hard.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But it's the cumulative effect of the balance and the nature and the calmness and all of that with that ability to be hard, like that collides. That's being powerful. Like that's what I want showing up.
Yeah.
Because if you just live in one side or the other, you've got weakness in both, right? So it's the combination. So sorry, I didn't mean to go off on a tangent.
No, man, no apologies. That was awesome. And honestly, it's you talked earlier about trying to impart one or two things to your son. That is probably one of the ones if I had to pick, would be for me and my kids. It's just be intentional and be present about where you are, because now, I mean, it's way harder than when you and I were growing up. There's just distractions constantly. And there are really smart people and really complex organizations that are built around, sucking that time away from you in any increment they can get it. Right. And so being able to have that discipline to say no, or being able to say, no, I am going to do this, and here's why I'm going to do it, rather than just like passively consuming or passively like auditing your own life. I think that you meet folks that do it now, like the younger generation. They jump off the page. You meet them, you're like, man, this person's got it together. They're with it. It's dynamic. It's like magnetic when you meet someone who has that. In a generation that has a different battle to fight to kind of get to that point.
Yeah, man, it's interesting. I really like it. I mean, I look at Kate now at 18, I've got the span, right? 5 to 18, 5, 16, 18. And I'm looking Kate crushing it going out in the world. And it's interesting, man. I mean, these kids feel like we're missing it. It's human evolution people are evolving so rapidly. It's insane. It's just different. And that's all it is. It's not easier. It's not this or that. Like I watch these kids today. I mean, in some respects, it's very impressive. There's some clearly that, but every culture had it. Every generation has had it. I mean, we can't sit around and be like, oh no, mine was better.
Yeah. Well, we can. We can.
No. Yeah. Well, we can. Gen Xers can.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know if you saw my Instagram post the other day about whatever it was like, don't mess with Gen Xers or why we're so,
no, I missed it.
People have such a hard time. I'll send it to you. But why people have such a hard time dealing with us, and it's like, because there's like this micro moment in time where we got enough of both sides to really screw it.
Yeah, no, you're right.
Enough tech, enough understanding with enough old school gritty, go play war in the creek across the street every day. And
yeah, absolutely.
Yep. Yeah.
That's great, man. Any good book recommendations for me before we go?
I'm currently reading Dan Martell's Buy Back Your Time. I don't know if you know Dan or
I
not. One
don't.
of the absolute most tremendous SaaS, so software as a service business coaches out there. I mean, massive coaching protocol and brilliant. Dan's a badass. And he just launched his book, Buy Back Your Time. So it showed up the other day with a little note. It's always cool to have brilliant people who write brilliant shit that help, us be more brilliant.
Yeah.
That's what that's how I look at it. And I think that's relevant for all of us, especially in the leadership world. We give up so much of our time. And so that's what I'm digging into right now, is looking at some of that wisdom coming from Dan
Awesome.
every day. So yeah, that's what I would say right now is probably on my top tier reading list, that Buy Back Your Time. And matter of fact, maybe I'll just buy a copy. It's good. It's good. And I trust Dan. Dan's a major anchor of trust. Very smart, very successful person who has orchestrated his life pretty well.
Yeah, it's honestly that's one of the I get a gist of what the book's about just by the title, but like I constantly wrestle with it, right? Just I don't. It's cliche, right? You never feel like there's enough hours in the day, and I told my wife the other night, I'm like, I just need to be. I wrestle with not being disciplined enough in my own mind. Like I need to be so regimented about every hour of the day because otherwise it just gets away from me, and it's easier said than done, and I know it.
Billy, self-judgment doesn't work very well.
Too late. It's too late.
We'll be staying for an extra second.
Yeah. About
gotta miss you, man.
Yeah. Likewise, dude. Likewise. Look forward to doing this again in person sometime soon.
Dude.
Yeah, excited to see what you're doing at Brute Force. That's amazing.
And check it out. It's changing the game. It's funny. I put the email out the other day. It's like 2023. Sand is out. Unstable load systems are in. So I want to bring it. I think we're finally bringing the science and the data and the understanding to now a new modality. It's really not new. It's been around for a long time, but we're refining this modality and bringing it, I think, to the market now in a way after, Brute Force has been around since 2009, but now bringing it in a way that makes radical sense. We're actually going to launch a Protect the Athlete program later this year.
Awesome.
Because, you look at it from high school forward, the athlete's probably the most valuable asset of the school. And, they're constantly at risk, injury and stuff. And, with the training systems and the bags and the way we're doing things now, the police departments, fire departments we're seeing injury rates go from 14 to like 1. We're seeing 50 to 80% reduction in injury rates. It's because it's working all the connective tissue. It's all the extra goodies, right? And it's not an everyday, all the time thing. It's an integration point. So, we're actually I'm going to push out a Protect the Athlete program to where we can start getting to college athletics, high school, pro sports. Cause that was your mission to me. I want results. And you gave me one boundary. Put a pin in it. You can't hurt them.
Yep.
So that was what I had to design it around. And that time really gave me a lot of insight into how critical that is. Cause, you even watch anybody, CrossFit games, somebody's going to blow the Open just started, right? Somebody's going to blow themselves out.
Mm-hmm.
Why? Because they've been doing the same repetitive motion for the same period in time, and they haven't been working the stabilizers, or the connective tissue or the other things necessary to give them that adaptive capacity in planes of motion. And foot's going to be wrong placement's going to happen, and knee's going to go. Merry Christmas. And so,
well, I'm a huge proponent of playing multiple sports as a kid and have that diversity of experience. And, some people just don't want to do that. They want to play one sport because they love it and they want to specialize. And okay. So this is the perfect intermediary, right? Of like, you can cross train and build up that sort of, that connective tissue, literally and figuratively, as an athlete without playing multiple sports. Look, I'm excited to see what you do with it, beyond just the physical piece of it. Like we've talked about, you're super intentional about it. I know there's a vision, there's a long-term goal and vision in mind here for you. And it's the way I look at it, it's almost like the sandbags and the mechanics and the execution of what you do is sort of secondary. It's sort of a means to an end for you. And I'm just excited to see where it goes.
Yeah, man, I appreciate that. Well, it's good stuff. And thanks for chilling. I always love it. Of course, when I saw Ryan on, I had to sit and watch. Were you on the beach that night with us? Before we go, were you on the beach? It was Mike Hazel.
Yeah.
Ryan, were you on the beach that night?
No, I was not. I had to recuse myself for plausible deniability.
Yeah, Ryan are out like lightning, coming off, and we're like filling sandbags at 1 o'clock in the morning before we're doing this road march at 5.
Yep.
Right. So, hey man, that was a good time.
Yeah.
I miss that.
I do too, and I appreciate you, and look forward to catching up again soon.
Yeah, brother. Thanks so much, man.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the No One Is Watching podcast. If you enjoyed it, be sure to subscribe so you can be notified when a new episode drops. If you're interested in similar content, you can check us out at nooneiswatching.com or find us on Twitter, Instagram, or Facebook. See you next time.